So Morgan say 0 to 60 in 4.8 seconds. But what does that actually feel like? So let's go Sports, Sport Plus, manual box. Just go for it. That is rapid. Rapid. Ladies and gents, I have been a bad automotive YouTuber. You see, I picked up this Morgan Plus 4 yesterday afternoon, courtesy of Brands Hatch Morgan, and proceeded to do no filming with it until today. I instead took friends and family for passenger rides in it as well. And one thing they all said was how special it was to be sat in it and be driving around in it. And I'm assuming that's for a number of different reasons. Over a couple of days in GenuinelyLAS, I'll be living with this Morgan Plus 4. I've got a couple of really cool things planned. We're going to go to the factory and hopefully mimic the route taken by the founder of Morgan and drive up and across the Malvern Hills. And why am I doing all of this, you may ask? Well, with the launch a few weeks ago now of the Morgan Supersport, a car that's supposed to be your everyday sports car, so ditch your 911 and get a Supersport. I had a thought. Yes, the Morgan Plus 4 doesn't have a boot, but it does have a very large passenger footwell. And on that basis alone, I think you could daily a Morgan Plus 4. Maybe daily is a stretch, but use it every day. It could be your everyday sports car for a chunk less than a Morgan Supersport. And over the next couple of days, I think I'm going to help prove that that is possible. Now, a bit of backstory as to how I got interested in Morgan. And well, I think like a chunk of people from my generation, my only real exposure to Morgan as a brand was through Top Gear. It was Jeremy Clarkson and James May making jokes about the wooden built nature of Morgans. And I remember an episode when Richard Harron commuted to work in a Morgan three-wheeler. But other than that, I really didn't have much knowledge about a Morgan. But if I saw one around, I would 100% recognize it. They've got such a distinctive look, and I still carried on in the new Morgan Plus 4 and Morgan Supersport. I then went down to Brands Hatch Morgan last year in the summer for one of their summer breakfast morning meets. So I was taken for a ride in a three-wheeler by a lovely man called Graham, which was one of the coolest experiences I think I ever have and ever will have in a car. Despite the fact I could barely fit in it and I felt like I was folded up like IKEA flat pack furniture, it was an awesome, visceral car. And I would love to have a go in a Super 3 one day. I think it'd be hilarious fun. One thing I did notice from speaking to people at the meet, they were worried about the future of the brand. Quite a few of them would have been around or had posters of or models of older Morgan models in their youth, with the old Plus 4, 4-4, a Plus 6, the three-wheeler, alongside posters of, say, old Ferraris or Lamborghinis. These are real aspirational items. When people could afford them, because these are not cheap, they went out and bought them. The issue now is how many young people do you know who actually have an idea of buying a Morgan car in the future? Yes, the Super 3 is pitched at, you could say, a younger audience as well, but it's still 40-odd thousand pounds for a literal toy, which a lot of people find hard to justify. And this is where I think a Plus 4 really could step into the forefront, because the Supersport is really cool, but it's very expensive. And with the way car prices are moving nowadays, a Plus 4 isn't actually that much more money than, say, a really spicy hot hatch. It's got its impracticalities, but the idea stands. It's a cool sports car for maybe those who have a nice little daily run around, or don't need a daily run around and just want something they can go out and blast on the weekends. Now, this may look like the Morgan Plus 4 that has been on sale since the 1950s, but this is a new Plus 4. Well, I say new, this model was released in 2020 and featured a range of different updates to modernize it whilst trying to keep it as classy and as true to the original as possible. So on the exterior, it may not look like that much has changed, and you'd actually be quite right. The only real change you would notice on the day-to-day are probably the LED front and rear lights. We also get a completely different engine. The Plus 4 now has a BMW 2-litre inline 4-pot engine, which is also found in a BMW Z4. You get the option between a 6-speed manual or an 8-speed ZF automatic. And we'll hop inside in a little bit, but if you are tall like me, 6'5" with long legs, the automatic is probably the only option you can go for, because I'm actually unable to operate the manual pedals, which is a bit of a disaster and almost brought me to tears. But away from my tears and back to the engine, it produces 255 horsepower. In the ZF automatic, that will give you a 0 to 60 time of 4.8 seconds, which doesn't sound very fast, but it truly feels like a spaceship in this thing when you floor the throttle. And the fact that the weight is just a smidge over 1 ton means this whole thing is a lot faster than you'd expect. And a little side note, look at this green. Ladies and gentlemen, look at this green. This colour is sensational. I don't even know what the name is, but I would love it to be on my walls. Now, before we hit the road, a couple more fun facts. The Avon tyres on this car are made especially for the Plus 4. And this gap we have here between the wheel arch and the bonnet, you can tell how old a Morgan is by how large this gap is. Over the years, as the cars have got wider and lower, this gap has grown. So if you find yourself cramming your hand into this gap, you're probably sat or looking at quite an old Morgan. Now, when you're sat in here, you're instantly reminded that you're sat in something special by the view of the bonnet. All the louvers in the bonnet hood in front of you are done by hand, which is incredible, and something I can't wait to watch happen when I go and see the factory tour tomorrow. You also get the headlights prominently out there, and the wheel arches really dominate your view. And what's great about having the wheel arches so dominant is you know exactly where the wheels are. So it feels really easy to place the car exactly where you want it. So it really feels like it inspires the confidence in you when you're driving. And pretty much everything you touch in here is handmade. It's incredible. The fit and finish is stunning. Everything you touch, everything you look at. I love the analog dials. I love they haven't just made it all digital or had a massive digital screen like you have, say, in a Rolls Royce. It feels like it's really fighting the trend of being the super modern sports car, which it easily could have done. They've kept it nice and analog and kept the spirit of the old Morgans alive. The dials as well for the fan speed and the temperature are so nicely weighted. It's just beautiful, simple and beautiful. You get Bluetooth as well. There's no radio, but you do get Bluetooth. Although, if I'm honest, you can't hear it above 40 to 50 miles an hour. That's not a big deal because you're having such a fun time driving around in this. Windows operated manually. You just slide these bad boys. I'm either very weak or that was actually very stiff. One of the two. But it's hard to decide. My pride will not let me give you the former. The seats as well, they're nice and comfy. I am a bit bigger, so I do feel like I'm spilling out of the size a little bit. They are comfy. They're not really wraparound sport seats. I'd say they're definitely more leisure seats. But still, the fit and finish is lovely. The carpet down in the footwells is really nice. It looks really nice. The details, just all the details, make this thing, take this thing from being great to just genuinely feeling really special. Wow. The manual handbrake as well is a lovely thing to touch. Just nice, firm, movement. Oh, beautiful. I'm really disappointed I don't get to try the manual gearbox, because I can imagine if it's anything like the rest of the cabin, it will feel exquisite. But sadly, I cannot confirm that for you. The fit and finish is excellent, and when you're looking into the manually adjusted mirrors, you can see the rear wheel arches. It is pretty awesome. I've got to say, rear visibility, from what I can see, is pretty good. I wouldn't assume that'll be much of an issue. What is a bit of an issue, I've got to say, I know I alluded to it before, is the storage. Yes, you do get a rear shelf behind the seats, but with the seats all the way back like I've currently got for myself, the shelf is about this big, about this wide, which means you can't get that much on it. It's great for filming kit, like putting my tripod there, putting my coat behind there. Other than that, it's really not it really doesn't offer much practicality. And when you see photos of the Supersport that has not only a boot, but what looks like a larger shelf, I can see why that is, on the face of it, a better everyday sports car. The passenger well, though, is pretty massive. You could definitely get a couple of bags in there and maybe squeeze your legs around them if you were going on a long trip. This would be an incredible car to drive down to the south of France in, or Spain, or wherever you want to go. I remember hearing about a group that were driving their Morgans from the UK down to Africa. And at that point, you then have to option baggage racks on the rear to fit all of your luggage in, because you just don't have the kind of space to fill that luggage in the front footwell. But what a special place. I will say the wheels and the paddles do feel very BMW. And oh, sorry, I completely forgot about one quite significant thing I dislike. The BMW gear selector. Amongst everything that's been either handmade or feels very Morgan and has an incredible fit and finish, seeing this BMW gear shift feels like a bit of a eyesore amongst a very pretty interior. There's also no cruise control. Again, as I alluded to on the long drives, it'd be really nice if you just had a cruise control lever that you could just crank on and just sit and coast and watch the views. It's not a massive deal, but these things you would notice over a long journey. And as I am about to make a big old journey to the hotel this evening, it's something that I feel is probably going to be sorely missed. I think the Morgan probably is in its element, cruising along like this, making journeys feel easy on the go and feeling pretty relaxing as well. This, in a way, is why I think the ZF gearbox comes a little bit unstuck in some ways. It really reminds me of the Volvo XC90's gearbox, in the sense that sometimes it's just really indecisive. Say you want to pull up at a junction, it doesn't want that for you. It makes it evidently clear by just not giving you a gear. I found a couple of times as well when I wanted to get a nice sprint in Sport Plus mode, it just goes into neutral and you just rev out in that moment. And on top of that, the gear change from first to second always feels really jerky, almost like a kind of movement, which just isn't relaxing. It's kind of opposite of what you'd want or what you'd expect. So that is a bit disappointing. But on the whole, when you're just here, just relaxing, just driving around, sunglasses, no sunglasses, it's a pretty fun, it feels like a special place to be. Having the exhaust right behind you there, I feel so involved in what's going on. I don't know if you can hear it, but even then the gear changes don't really know what they want to do. Another thing about the ZF gearbox is when you're not in sports mode, let's not forget this is 8 ratios. So when you're not in sports mode, it tries to climb the gears what feels like as quickly as possible, which is perfect on the motorway, and it will happily mean you'll sit at 1900 RPM in 70 miles an hour. Because when you're going around town, you find that before you know it, you're in 6th gear. So then if you want to really kick on and get a burst of acceleration, the kick down feels like dropping about 3 gears, which makes it really abrupt. Back onto small details, you can't see it, you might not be able to see it from there, but behind the steering wheel there are a couple of grooves at the top and on the bottom of the middle spoke. They're going to seem like a lot when you get into it and your fingers go straight into the gaps. You think, oh, I might actually be able to be a racing driver, I know where to put my hands. The 3-spoke flat bottom is also perfect for entry and exit, because frankly I'll be having a nightmare if it was a full-on circle. Now, as I said earlier, the Morgan Plus 4 has been pretty much the same since 1955. And it's quite hard nowadays to find examples of objects or machines that were around in 1950, sorry. I think I found a place where we can find some like-minded machines. Wow. Well, the Tangmere Military Aviation Museum. One interesting place. I think as most guys that goes to normal boys school and history class, you learn a lot about World War I and World War II, so I become quite interested in history and really enjoy getting tucked into some documentaries around it. So to be around some aircraft and to read some really incredible stories about things like the Battle of Britain and some night raids is, yeah, really, really cool. So it's a really cool place. If you're ever around, check it out, Tangmere. Yeah, military museum. I love it. I love a plane. I love a bit of military history, so this place is almost made for me. What's also really interesting is the planes they have in the forecourt. You've got classics like the Sea Vixen and the Harrier. And what I find quite interesting about the whole thing is, well, the original Plus 4 predates all of these, which you never would have thought, but now that I'm here, it's pretty crazy to think, and it's still going strong. And the Morgan is still going strong, which is pretty inspirational. I think my excitement to go and see this factory tour really is building now. What a fun little side quest this has been. Really cool. It did make me laugh at one point. I was getting ready to drive down on the motorway last night, and I was just pulled over, just kind of, just sorting my stuff out, getting my phone ready for Google Maps. And this guy said to me, well, he said, you better get there before, you better get wherever you're going before night. And I was like, well, how cold can it be? I don't think I've ever been so cold in all my life. It was so chilly. That is what, in my mind, it must feel like to go on an Arctic adventure. I mean, to be fair, luckily, I exaggerate. Luckily, the heating is very, very good in the Plus 4. So it was blowing onto my leg, and I was putting my hand down there, which was keeping me quite warm. Because it's kind of blocked by the dash, you don't get the full benefit of if it was like on top of the dash in front of your face. But yeah, so I had I felt like I was in a hurricane. So as you can see today, dressed in a jumper, I've got my hat and I've got my gloves. I'm not messing around this time. Yeah, I'm now more excited than ever to get onto the motorway in a Morgan. Now, I'm sorry it may look like I'm being a bit of a killjoy with the roof on straight out of the gates, but I'm literally about to get onto the motorway heading to Malvern, to the factory for a tour that any of you can take. So to avoid my head turning into a literal icicle, I've currently got the roof up. But when we get out of that tour and we get on some open roads, the roof is coming all the way down very, very quickly. And on that note, first step, Malvern. Two early observations I've made whilst pottering down the motorway. One, and I guess it has to be, but the air conditioning, the heating in here is really, really good. I mean, despite the fact that even with when I've had the roof down, this kind of air, this warm air pocket that fills around you is pretty sublime, I think is the right word for the occasion. And two, just how easy it is to drive on the motorway and how easily it just sits at 1900 RPM and 70 miles an hour. Yes, it is really loud at motorway speeds. Luckily we're just doing 40 right now, but this thing feels so capable. The seats are really comfortable. This is now more than 2 observations, but the seats are really comfortable. The steering is nice and direct, it doesn't feel floaty. And the ride is so smooth and so well dampened for, well, a sports car. Yes, when I have put it briefly into Sport and Sport Plus, the car really does firm up. That gives it like a nice Jekyll and Hyde style personality. Now, I wasn't really expecting that. But maybe it probably is a stereotype that I had in my head of Morgans and maybe being, I don't know, a bit rough around the edges, but it feels so well put together. Everything you touch in here is so nice. I just cannot get over the view out of the bonnet. If you've never sat in a Morgan, I would just say, if you ever get the opportunity, just sit and look out along the bonnet. It is a stunning view, and it's made even better because, well, the colour of this car. One thing that you may notice about the Morgan is a tiny bit of wind noise. I like to call it personality, but one of my favourite things to make sure you don't get too hot in the car is just on your side, in your midriff, you can feel a little bit of air coming through at all times. It's a nice flow to keep the circulation nice and pure. Just a little bit of wind noise. I don't at all feel like I'm in the middle of a hurricane.
Simply put, the factory tour is a pretty incredible experience, and your admiration for the skill involved throughout the process would just go through the roof. Goodness me. We also managed to catch a glimpse of a couple of limited edition Super 3s and a very, very rare Plus 4 CXT, which was sensational. Not only that, but we also saw the beginnings of Supersport production, the ongoing Midsummer production, and the end of the Plus 6 Pinnacle Edition production, wrapping up the whole production run of the Plus 6. I could not recommend this factory tour enough. Now, to the Malvern Hills we go.
Here we go. The tree. Climbing the Malvern Hills in a Morgan. This is obviously a BMW 2.4 cylinder. bit bumpy, put it into drive, it all chills out again, and all of a sudden you're just cruising along on a nice summer's day. It does both so well. I can't believe how well it does both. Roads like this, they're just made for this kind of car. Keep the language child friendly, but this is so fast. 0 to 60 obviously in this 4.8 seconds, but it feels so much faster. It feels like every time you put your foot on the accelerator, you have to take off. It's special. It's so special. The feel of the long bonnet. Because of the wheel arches, you feel like you can place the car so well. I feel like I know exactly where the wheels are. And you couple that with the steering, it's like holy guacamole. I'm in paradise. turn around and go back up the hills. I could just see the hills back there. Yeah. What are we doing? Where are we going? Let's turn around. Let's sort this out. Oh. What a day. What a day. I'll be completely honest, I wanted to conclude this video essentially saying, yeah, the Morgan Plus 4, I've used it through the city or a big town, I've used it on the motorway, I've used it on country roads, and it does all of it really, really well. And you could in fact use this every single day because, well, what else would you need? And as easy as that would be to say, I just can't conclude that, because as good as it is at doing everything, as we could say most modern cars are now, every single time I've stepped into this car, I've sat behind the wheel or somebody sat next to me, it's always felt like such a special place to be. It's always felt like an occasion every time. Whenever I've moved into sport mode and got onto the manual and started using the paddles, it felt special. I've never sat in this car and thought, this is just like, I just feel like I'm just going to pop to the shops and do my shopping in it and just head back and, you know, use it every day. I wanted to challenge the idea that you don't need to keep this in a shed all year round. You could take it out, drive it all the time, and then just drive it all year round. But the Morgan Plus 4, and probably all the other Morgan models as well, this has shown me that it really, as cliche as it sounds, it really is about the drive rather than the destination. Getting in this just to drive around is hilarious fun. As fun as this has been navigating it through some of the streets of London, or, you know, how comfortable and funny it's been driving on the motorway, my one memory that I will probably cherish for a very, very long time is driving through the Malvern hills, taking it up, finishing the factory tour and coming straight up into the hills. That's what this car is all about. The enjoyment of driving, the freedom you have of the roof down. And that's why it will always be a car that I'd only ever take out for a special occasion or a day like this. Thank you again to Brands Hatch Morgan, and thank you for watching. See you in the next one.